Today on HooptieDoodle's Goldwing bobber build, it's the wiring edition, and we're going to be breaking this wiring up into multiple videos because it is complicated and it takes a while. And so today we're organizing the wiring and wiring in the speedometer. This is exciting because the bike is finally starting to come alive. Come along and see how I do it. Alright, so wiring. I did label a number of the things on here. It's like this is supposed to go to the CDI box. I labeled this spark unit, etc. So I did put labels on a bunch of the things on here as I took them off. So I have a good concept of where the wires are supposed to be going to. This, I think, is the simplest thing to start with. It's its own little harness, essentially. And this is all stuff that will stay in the same exact spot. These are little senders from the engine, temperature and oil senders, fan. This is oil pressure or oil temperature. And then this guy is, I think, the fan itself. And so this all has its own little connector right here. And this, I think, is the simplest thing to start with on the wiring. And so I'm gonna do this first. And that probably involves removing the radiator. All right, so I can actually access this if I take off my regular rectifier, which was right about here, and then move in here. I can get to the switch over here, which I don't know if that's a temperature or a fan switch right there. But there's also another switch back, oh, you can almost see it, underneath the carburetor, basically is what I'm getting at. There's another switch that I need to wire in, plug in, and so I've got to take the carburetor off to access that. And then my other switch, this is the oil pressure, I believe, over here. This red guy, that's easy to access. But those, and then the neutral switch, I don't seem to have a neutral switch. On my other engine, it was located, there was a wire that came up through here and basically came off the front panel. There's a wire that's supposed to come out right about up in there. And I don't have that wire on this engine, so I'm not sure. Maybe I don't have a neutral switch on this one. There is the switch we're looking for, that green guy right there. So that I have access, I can plug that in now, and I still take a look around here for a neutral switch, but I still don't see a neutral switch hook up anywhere. All right, so that's supposed to run over to there. One of these plugs in right there. All right, I've got this section wired, that small little section wired in. I've got my little wire for the neutral switch over here where it's supposed to go, but I don't have a wire coming from the engine. I'm not sure what the situation is with that. I have to take the engine apart in order to figure it out. I'm not going to do that. I will just wire the bike accordingly so that I don't have a neutral switch. I've run the rest of the wires up through here. They run up the side here, right here, these guys, and up into there. And then over here, they come up over through here, and one of them runs down and connects to the fan below this little firewall thing. And then we've got this that connects into the main wire harness right here. Speaking of which, the next step is just to take the fuse box, put this guy over here where it's gonna live, and then start wiring from there. All right, so my fuse box is on there. My ignition coil connection is right there. My ignition coil is right here, and the wires can actually reach right to that, so that should be fairly easy to do. I'm not gonna worry too much about that. I've also got connections on here for like the control unit. The control unit's right behind that, so I can reach this over and plug it in. I'm just going to start plugging in what I can plug in and then see how the wires lay out after that. Spark units, spark unit 2, spark unit 2, and that's my labeling, that's not an official language. I'm just connecting them back the way I found them. This is my ignition switch. Or is it? No, that's something else right there. Main fuse here. Fuel sender, we don't need that anymore. I don't know what that is. Where's my ignition switch? this guy. Ignition switch, to believe. Yeah, that would make sense because it's up near the headlight and all that. So ignition switch goes in here. All right, then I've got, this goes to the alternator, my new alternator here. Oh, this is the regular rectifier. That's what that is. All right, so I'm just chugging away on the electrics here. My plan of attack basically is to label everything I possibly can to figure out what is what. I'm trying to reuse the stock wiring harness. It may be quicker and easier to rewire everything, but I'm not that confident, so trying to reuse this thing. So what I'm doing, I'm going through labeling everything. This is part of the old wiring harness. Since I moved the ignition switch from the handlebars down to here, that necessitates some other things. And so I'm starting from the ignition switch and working out, tracking down wires and sort of sorting things out to where they're going to be on this bike. This is something that used to plug into the fairing and go to the headlights and turn signals and other accessories within the fairing. So there's some stuff here that can be simplified and taken apart. Like this guy, this goes to the headlights and it used to plug in over here. And so this guy can come off. Like these wires, I'm gonna go ahead and pull these off of this connection because this connection is on the fairing and is gonna be eliminated. So I'm trying to go through the wires on this and figure out where they can go and what they do. Some of them I assume I'm not gonna be using at all. But the headlight one, well, at least I'm gonna take this off and plug it into that plug over there so I have a plug at least that I could use. So I've tracked down the wires for that and I'm now going to take them off of here, off of this plug. And I have a little special tool to pull these out because they have little sort of barbs on them that they come in and then the barb sort of springs open and you can't pull it back out. And this set of tools here, which I'll put in a link in the description. This allows you to come in here and push that barb up and out of the way and take the connector out again. All right, so there's that guy. Go ahead and pull him out of there. That's one. This green one is another one. The green one right here can come out. And then we've got this white one. That's out. So this guy should come free. And now I'm gonna go ahead and plug this in over here. I'm just basically trying to organize things at this point. I'm not really accomplishing anything other than sorting and organizing. And this could go on for days, I'm sure. So there's that. It's a little bit more organized and sorted. I know at least what it's supposed to do. And then from here, I could, in theory, wire this directly into the headlight up here. Another bit is like this fuel sender. I'm not gonna be using that at all because I have no fuel sender on this bike anymore. The new gas tank doesn't have that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that part. Cut that off, and then on the other end of it, this goes up. And then this guy goes up to the Speedo. So that is where that would plugged in. It would have plugged into the Speedo and given a readout up there. So I no longer need that wire. I'm gonna go ahead and push that out. All right, so I'm still working on the wiring here. I'm just figuring out how much wiring I can stuff into this headlight, which turns out to be quite a bit. There's a lot of connectors for all the controls for the handlebars and everything that can get stuffed in here. And so that's pretty awesome. So my wiring length is not as excessive as I thought because a lot of it is just being transferred up from here into the headlight. It actually takes up a lot of the length of the wire loom and makes this a lot simpler where I'm not going to have to shorten a lot of these wires the way I thought I was going to, which means I don't have to jump in here and organize every single wire, which makes that a lot easier. Now there's just a few wires that are too long here and everything else kind of lines up in a decent manner. I think there's only going to be a handful of wires I'm going to have to deal with in terms of customizing the wire length. I'm going to start up here, get this new speedometer wired in. These guys right here, you can see I've already got these connections connected. These go to the controls for the handlebars, and they are a good length already. Everything fits in there pretty neatly into the headlamp. So all I have to deal with at this point is this one is for the Speedo. There's another one for the Speedo here that comes from the stock wiring harness. I gotta see how those line up with the new speedometer and the wires that come from that. Well, there's a few things that I'm going to be able to eliminate, like the fuel sender. And then I've got a bunch of connections. These are for like the turn signals and the tail light. Figured those out, but the lengths seem to be working out, and the wire, these connections may be just perfectly fine. I just need to actually connect everything. This is a little bit excessive in length. This guy here, this actually goes to the old headlight. I may put a new connector on here because I could definitely shorten this part here if I wanted to, and that might make things a little bit neater in terms of fitting it into my new headlamp. And the only other thing that I have to contemplate is on the new headlamp itself, I've got this little halo ring, which means some new wiring and a new switch. I'm really kind of tempted to put a little switch on top of here. I just really like those metal toggle switches, and I kind of really want to use one on this bike somehow, somewhere. And so that would be cool to wire this in so that the LED ring comes on with the bike, because this bike, I believe, is designed to, when you turn it on, the headlamp comes on, and it's on all the time. I'd like to have this so that instead of the headlamp, the halo ring on the outside comes on, and then you got a switch on here that turns the headlamp itself on. All right, so the connection for the old speedometer, which I have right here, is just these two connectors here, and then these three connectors for, this is like turn signal taillight stuff here. That's this connector, there's this connector, and it's these guys here that these tie into. That's all there is that goes to the speedometer up on here. So if I can start sorting through these wires here and figure out which ones I can connect into here, then I might also go ahead and steal these old connectors off of the old speedometer and reuse them to plug in here. So we'll see how that works out, if I can do that or not. All right, now I've gotten to a point here where I'm dealing with the connection that goes to the Speedo, and now I'm identifying the individual wires within that connection. So I'm going to go ahead and take this part off, and I'm going to start labeling each of these little wires to what they're supposed to go to. All right, so at this point I've got the battery hooked up again, got it hooked up to the little battery tender, battery charger. Then I've got, from the battery, I've got connected a ground. The main ground goes up to this guy right here, circle connector there. And then I've got the positive going to my main fuse here. Now what I'm doing is going back up here, and we're looking at all these little connections for the speedometer, and I can actually turn the speedometer on by connecting it up correctly. There's a ground wire here, the green, this dark green color, that's a ground, for pretty much a universal ground on this model and make and year of bike. I've got power coming from the new speedometer. This is the power cable here. So I can hook the power up. There's two powers on this thing. There's a brown and black and a brown and white. Those are both power coming in to this connector. One went to like the tachometer, one went to the speedometer, as well as they both went to multiple things. But if I hook up this guy to the power, and I hook up there's also a ground coming from the new speedometer, this guy here. If I hook that guy into the ground, I can actually turn the speedometer on. Got this wired in. I've got the GPS cable sender unit here wired in. I separated these things out a little bit because on the main section here that I'm going to be using, I've got some shrink wrap on here that I'm going to shrink in a minute. On the other ones, this white and green one go to the little button on the side. That guy over there. I've got those wired in there with some little female connectors and some shrink wrap on those. And then this yellow one is for the fuel sender, and I'm not going to be using that, so that's sort of tied up and going to be stored in the housing here for now. And then I should be able to slide this all back into the housing once I've shrink wrapped that thing. And then on the other side of the housing, we've got the little shrink wrap tubing coming out there, the GPS sender unit right there, then all my little wires set up right here. And I'm just going ahead and putting connectors on the ends of this, and then we'll put it into a main connector box thing here to make it nice and neat. I'll show you that in a second. So I've got a neat little tool here, a crimper, It holds the wires and pulls them apart for me, and I really like it. Like that, pulls it straight off of there, no problem. Then I've got a bunch of these little male prong guys here. I'll go ahead and put that on the end. All right, now I can go ahead and place these into a connector. This guy is a brand new connector for the other side. This is the old stock one. And so I'm just plugging right into the old stock wiring. This guy fits on there like so. These, I believe, are the 2.3 millimeter connectors. I'll put it in the link in the description below in the video. And that basically references these guys here, how big these guys are, 2.3 millimeters wide. And so these go into here like so. And to do it neatly, they all go into the end here. You can see right here, you can see the little barb right there. And so it goes in to this guy. The barb clicks in and then locks in place so it can't be pulled back out. On the stock wiring harness, the ground is this guy, the green one, and that goes in the top middle position right there. So that's the ground on that side. So on the other side, I want to have it the equivalent position. So that would be this spot right there. So that's where I'm going to place this guy. Now it's in there. It's not coming out. So now I've got my ground. Now power is this red one. Power is right below it. I'm using this brown and white. So on this guy, it's just below that, right here. All right, now that one's in, and you can see how they stick out on the other end, like so. And so everything should line up, and these will slide right together, like that. And now I just go ahead and do that for all the other ones, and line them up accordingly. You can see I have a temperature gauge and I'll line that one up accordingly, and oil pressure. All right, so this guy's all set. I've got it plugged in. Everything lines up the way it's supposed to. And I'm gonna go ahead and shrink this tubing onto this guy up here. All right, speedometer is wired in. I'll go ahead and turn the key on. And then it has to go through and cycle and figure out where it is, basically. I don't know if it does it every time you turn the bike on or what. There it is. Now it's ready to go. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. That's all for part 1 of the wiring. So keep on wrenching. We'll see you next time.